Hello, I'm Jody Wolf, and you're watching Expoz March 24, 2018, 7:19 p.m. Birmingham. Topic: wow, I did not see this coming. And when you hear what I'm going to tell you, then you'll fully understand. But I need to give you two hypothetical situations in order to get you on the same page. And some of you will understand one of these, some will understand the other, and I think between the two, everyone will understand where I'm headed with this. And it's what Donald Trump did. First, go back. Do you remember the original Superman movie? It was, 25 years ago or so. And Superman came from Krypton, and a little capsule crashed in a farm. The Kents took care of him as a baby. And as he got older, Lex Luthor was his archenemy. And then you had these three misfits that were in prison, somehow escaped when a nuclear bomb exploded in outer space and cracked the shield or piece of glass they were embedded in. Well, anyway, they started wreaking havoc on Earth. Well, Superman, in the meanwhile, had freely given up his powers. So he was like you and me and you. And Lex Luthor, his enemy, wanted him to stay that way. But here's what happened. When these three misfits from the planet Krypton escaped, they came to Earth where Superman was, and they were seeking to destroy him. And they met up with Luthor. Luthor said, "I tell you where his house is. I tell you where his girlfriend is." So this is what they did. Well, when they went to his house, Superman, remember, he gave up his powers, but he went back and took his powers back so he could fight them. So when he led them back to his home, thanks to Luthor, they're all there, and he thinks, or rather Luthor thinks, that Superman can side with him momentarily. He said, "Look, if you can help me get them in this little cage over here, this room, we can take away their powers, just like mine was taken away." And then Luthor said, "Hey, Sergeant, don't do that. If you put Superman in that cage, you'll permanently do away with his powers." And he said, "Thanks, Luthor, the owner of Australia," or whatever he said. So they forced Superman to go into this 4x4 room, and they inserted the crystal. And then the beam comes out. Well, but what happened in the meanwhile, instead of that room being the room that took his powers away, he reversed it. It was that room that was his protection. So everyone outside the room, it took their powers away. That's one example. So he did it to them, and they didn't even know it. The second example, let's talk about Gideon and his 300 chosen men. In Judges chapter 7, verse 1 through 24, there's a story there. There's Gideon, and there's the Midianites. They're chasing him. They're going to kill him in his city, his town, Israel. So God sends an angel to go find Gideon and help him and let him know what's going on. So Gideon gets his city, and you can guess there may be about 90,000 people there. And when I read this story on Trump, then I replied back with this story of Gideon, but I rewrote it. The numbers have changed slightly, but they're very close, and exactly what happened is to the T. I want you to hear that. So I wrote back to this person that sent me this letter. The deep state has never read a bill. Proof, Obamacare. But stand back and pay attention, see? That's what I call her. Watch those, the Republicans and Democrats, and how they oppose everything Trump does. Watch them as they either let time run out or just can't seem to get it together enough to read. This is how you can spot the deep state like a bright red light in the dark. It's the Republicans, it's the Democrats, it's the liberal, it's the media, it's the swamp, and they're all part of that swamp. All of them emit a red gas that stinks. Out of all Congress and Senate, the Trump allies are very few. However, with Trump's amazing wisdom and knowledge, that's all he needs is a few. And that's part you and I, because we're with him. Here's a similar story. This is Gideon, a few thousand years ago. Again, an angel went to warn him. So God went to personally tell Gideon, round up some men. And Gideon had 22,000. When 22,000 came forward, you can assume the city was about 90,000 in size. Men, women, children, and the elderly. So when 22,000 stepped forward, God says, you know what, Gideon, that's too many. Let's send some back in. So when he tells Gideon to send them back in or send them back home, he says, look, if you have children and you don't want to go to war, stay home. Well, that left 15,000 for the battle. Then the king asked, who of you, of this 15,000, who of you really wants to go back home? Well, then half of them left, 7,500. Keep in mind, God knows what's going on, and this is God's plan. And hypothetically, there's 10 times as many Syrians, about 300,000. The Midianites. So God told the king, ask those who are of you are afraid, even those that wanted to battle. Well, 5,000 raised their hands, and God told the king, send them home. Now there's 2,500 Jews being made ready for battle. God told the king, everyone with a sword, raise your hand. Well, 1,200 had a sword. The God should send the other 1,300 home. And God told the king, lead all the men to the water to drink and get them ready for battle. But watch those who drink. If they stand and drink and they're being aware of things around them, then keep them. If they get on their knees and drink water, they're paying no attention to anything, those you send home. Well, guess what? All of them went home, but 500. 500 men stood around and was aware. And Gideon said to God, God, look, I don't have but 500 men here. God says, I know you still got too many. He says, send 200 of them home. 200 went home. And Gideon said, what are we going to do? God says, you take 300 clay pots, 300 men. You make sure that each clay pot's ready to light a fire. And when you light that fire, I'll tell you when, I want you to have each of the 300 with a sword, each of the 300 with a ram's horn, and you position them out a certain distance apart, and you're going to circle the entire camp of the Midianites. Keep in mind, there's 300,000 Midianites in this valley, and there's a few hills. But also keep in mind, these hills are like an amphitheater, okay? Just before daylight, like at 4:30 a.m., everybody's in place. All the Jews are in place. They're ready to light their clay pots, and they're ready to bang the clay pots with swords, and they're ready to blast the war horns or the battle horns. God gave the signal, and this is what they did. The Syrians, or the Midianites, came out half asleep and terrified because it sounded like the very people that they were going after to kill was now in their camp, killing them, because the noise is so great and so loud, they thought that they were there with them. So they came out fighting, and they fought. and they killed each other, except a few that did escape and get away, and God told Gideon, send your men after them and take them down as well. And this is what happened. So you had 300 men that watched 300,000 almost wipe themselves out in just a few minutes. So outwitting Congress and Senate is what Trump is doing. So let me tell you now what the statement was that came to me, okay? And she said, I thought you would like to see this news. Is quoted from They Are Stupid. Trump screwed them all. He hid the funding for the wall in the military budget. I read some of the wording and pulled one over on the deep state, or as he read that the deep state had one pulled over him. He said in his speech that the wall was needed for national security. Once a national security issue, the military can be involved. He's going to use the Army Corps of Engineers, and we've done this before. The Army Corps has built dams or like around towns on Highway 331, the old Florida short route. And this is what they do. They go in towns and lend a hand where needed in times when they need it. Well, they'll use the Army Corps to do this. Well, this takes the matter out of Congress' hands. Now the president has full control of the wall being built. Trump just made them fund their own demise. Guys, listen to this. Trump just made them fund their own demise. So good night, deep state. Now, if you search military construction in the bill, huge section, money, lots of it, discretion to the Secretary of Defense and Army Secretary, waiving of regulations, billions appropriated, waiving of water, now get this, safety EPA regulations. This is where the EPA was going to stop it along the Rio Grande River, waiving of water safety EPA regulations, approval for eminent domain purchases up to 100% of land value. So what do you think that language is for? The wall is going to be fully fast-tracked. It's going to be built. The EPA would have held up the wall indefinitely, but now Trump bypassed them. Trump has full discretion of how the money to be spent. Congress has no say in how the money is spent. This bill is not a budget. Trump outsmarted them again. Congress should have passed a budget. Remember, they sell their butts and they kept doing this and wouldn't do anything. But the wisdom of Trump, in other words, he used them as their own trap. He used their own witting or wit, whatever you want to call it. He got them, guys. He took them. Now, let me tell you the biggest part of it all. Here's the biggest issue of everything. What is it that hurts our country, or did hurt, still hurts our country? It is BAAL. B-A-A-L. Y'all remember that. BAAL. When Trump destroyed BAAL, when he struck down Agenda 21, when they bowed out of the UN, they're getting rid of BAAL. And when he takes abortion and defunds it, they're taking down BAAL. Remember, during Obama's 8 years, no budget was ever passed, only an ominous bill. Now, ominous rather. This gave Obama the power to spend money however he wanted, but he spent his very foolishly by giving it to people like Iran. Trump said, give me the money for the military and you can do whatever you want, and they did. There again, they didn't read anything. just like they never read anything. So Trump doesn't have to spend the $500 million on Planned Parenthood, which he is not. He'll spend it on whatever he wants, or nothing at all, or the wall. Now look here. When I told you there was something here about this, why was the Midianites after Gideon? Because in Judges 6, get this, the Midian oppressors, they were going to destroy Israel. Why? Because Israel destroyed Baal. They destroyed the altar of Baal. And that riled up everyone. Trump destroyed the altar of Baal in our country, the United States, and this is a parallel story to Judges 6, the Midian oppressors against Israel, again, because they destroyed the altar of Baal. And then the Gideon 300, this is Judges 7, 1 through 24, in the Midianites, where they were destroyed, well, they destroyed themselves. This is a parallel story to what Donald Trump is doing to Baal and with Baal by getting rid of abortion, by stopping it, defunding it. It's just like destroying the altar of Baal, guys. Now you got everybody mad at him. Well, when you destroy the altar of Baal in this country, you got the representatives, the Republicans and the Democrats, all the deep state, the liberal, the media, the swamp. They hate him because of it. This is a parallel story to the Bible, Judges 6 and Judges 7. If you read that, you'll see what Donald Trump just did really hurt them. So, now you've heard the movie Spartacus in the 300. Guys, that really happened, but it wasn't Spartacus, it was the Jews against 300,000, and the Jews won. Outwitting Congress and the Senate is what Trump is doing. Trump is a genius. He used it on them, their own sources, but reversed it without them knowing it. This man that wrote The Art of the Deal is a very smart man, and he happens to be the president of this United States. Jody Wolf, Expoz.